Before Hound Dog and the Black Leather, before Graceland and before Priscilla, there was Elvis's Summer of Innocence. Now, only on Extra, the exclusive home movie stuffed in an attic for 40 years.
I had no idea it would be as valuable as it turned out to be, you see.
It's Elvis at play, fishing, water skiing, and mocking Adolf Hitler.
Love me tender.
And there was a beautiful young woman named June.
Elvis was high energy. Yeah, he liked to play.
The woman who almost became the King's reigning queen remembers their passionate love affair in 1956.
It was another life.
It was Elvis back in 1956 who was all the rage, but those admirers of his probably never saw the singer's wild side. However, now Extra has an exclusive look at some forgotten home movies showing the King really cutting loose. David Rose has Elvis's Summer of Innocence.
I know that you've been told it's not fair to tease.
This is 21-year-old Elvis. Not on stage, not mauled by fans, not quite the king. It's Elvis, the kid from Memphis, in a rare film that's been tucked away for 40 years.
Treat me nice.
This incredible movie captures Elvis doing things he had never done before.
I think his first fish was a pretty fair-sized shark, and he really got his kicks. And
Eddie Bellman shot the film, which shows Elvis for the very first time deep sea fishing, struggling to reel in this shark 20 miles from the Mississippi shore. An eager Elvis, nearly fully clothed, cutting the wake while water skiing for the first time in the Biloxi Bay.
was he competitive? I would say so, sure.
Eddie and I watched the film he shot 40 years ago. Once Elvis's summer vacation moved to land, Eddie hands his 28-gauge shotgun to Elvis, who tries his hand at skeet shooting. Another first for the boy from Memphis. Later, a gutsy Elvis actually holds out a tiny cigarette paper at arm's length. Facing him is a loaded BB gun.
There's Elvis holding it, and the guy hit it. I'd hate to get hit with one of those BBs, though, in the hand. But he was real daring, and he was a little reckless at times.
Well, since my baby left me, well, I found a new place to dwell.
Also aboard the Aunt Jenny fishing boat was Elvis's 17-year-old girlfriend, June Juanico. They were young, foolish, engaged, and in love. Elvis's baby.
He said, "You go over there and so I can get a picture of my baby." And he used to call me his baby, and I'm not sure if he was talking about me, his baby, or the Cadillac, his baby, one of the two.
June has great memories driving around Biloxi with Elvis in his '55 Cadillac. In fact, it was this car that took them to the bay the day they went fishing.
I'm all shook up.
Memories which bring back the good times and bad for June. She remembers how difficult it sometimes was just to do the most simple things.
People were tearing at his clothes and at my clothes when I was with him. It was just unbelievable, you know, how people reacted. When we went out on the fishing trip, on the way in, word got out. We couldn't unload at the dock because there was just a traffic jam, cars, and the Cadillac was parked there, and they had marked, wrote phone numbers, call me, I love you, everything with lipstick all over.
It was one day after the fishing trip, and Eddie convinced Elvis to come to his shoe store to sign autographs. That store used to be right here, but like most businesses in Biloxi 40 years ago, it's long gone. What is left are memories that Eddie says will last a lifetime.
When I look at these pictures, it seemed like it was just a couple of years ago, really and truly.
Elvis agreed to visit Eddie's shoe store for 5 minutes. He stayed for nearly an hour. Hundreds of fans showed up to have a peek at rock and roll's up-and-coming idol.
Well, they said you was high class.
The whole front area was full of people, outside, inside, and they was letting them in shifts.
This is the last time Eddie Bellman saw Elvis. But now, 40 years later, these images he captured and shared with us have given a new insight into the life and times of the king of rock and roll.
Terrific memories. I wish I could go every day like that.
Well, they said you was high class.
All that's a part of Elvis's Summer of Innocence.
You ain't looking for a hound dog.
Bare-chested, struggling to reel in a fish, eating peanut butter and banana sandwiches with his mom. caught in a romantic embrace with his passion before Priscilla.
See how sweet he is? I mean, he was always touchy-lovey.
Now, only on Extra, it's Elvis Presley's Lost Home Movies. He's dancing, he's smiling, he's loving. An exclusive look at Elvis before he was king.
Just think, in the middle of this craziness, he has 1 month off.
Extra takes you back to 1956. It's Elvis's Summer of Innocence. It's a time you'll never forget. It's Wednesday, April 24th, and Extra's in the time machine.
Well, bless my soul, what's wrong with me? I'm itching like a
There's a reason they called him the king. For more than 40 years, Elvis Presley has defined superstardom.
Yes, he has. And now Extra has discovered a Lost Home movie revealing the king at play before Graceland and before Priscilla. Extra's David Rose has this exclusive look at Elvis' Summer of Innocence.
Love me tender, love me sweet.
21-year-old Elvis Presley, seen here 4 decades ago, wearing a skin-tight nautical t-shirt and dark shorts, with a whole lot of shaking going on. If you look closely, you can even see Elvis's trademark grin, a telltale sign he's enjoying his very first deep-sea fishing trip.
It was a beautiful day. The sun was out. The skies were clear, and the water, the sea was nice. It wasn't bad at all. It was a nice, calm day.
Meet 76-year young Eddie Bellman. This quintessential Southern gentleman from Biloxi, Mississippi, captured this never-before-seen 8mm film of Elvis Presley on vacation.
I never had taken movie film before.
It was 1956, and back on land, Elvis had just signed a lucrative movie deal. His singles were climbing to the top of the charts. He was on the cusp of superstardom. But it was on a boat much like this one almost 40 years ago that Elvis was able to put aside his celebrity status and maybe for the very last time wallow as a normal, innocent young man.
Just think, in the middle of this craziness, he has 1 month off. So it's like the last month of his life, really, that he can be Elvis Presley from Tupelo. He can be Elvis Presley from Memphis.
Musicologist Michael Ochs says this time and place was perhaps the last gasp of Elvis's innocence.
Baby, if I made him mad.
His Don't Be Cruel was anything but cruel. It was quickly becoming a huge hit.
The future looks bright ahead, but don't be cruel.
It goes from a minor phenomenon to an icon, all within 1 month.
But this was Elvis in Biloxi. His time to tune out with a fishing trip 20 miles off the coast of Mississippi, relaxing aboard the Aunt Jenny, a converted shrimp boat. What makes this film so special is that it captures Elvis off guard, seen here stripped to the waist, bare-chested, struggling to land this fish, a shimmering bonita, while his mom Gladys and his dad Vernon look on. Later, Elvis enjoying a homemade meal, a peanut butter and banana sandwich, made especially for him by his mother, who's standing by watching as Elvis eats and fishes. He was surrounded by family and friends. Here's Red West, a buddy from Memphis, always mugging for the camera. Look at a much younger Eddie Bellman, rarely seen because he was the one behind the camera. And the real reason Elvis was even on this boat, 17-year-old June Juanico, her head wrapped in a scarlet scarf, his teenage love, his Biloxi belle.
It was a great day. We killed the fish. We just killed the fish. I caught the most.
You did?
Yes,
You caught
I
the most
did.
fish? What did Elvis think about that?
Oh, he loved it. Yeah, he loved it.
I spoke with June, who still lives in Biloxi and still holds fond memories of that special summer. We watched the film together as she reminisced about their romance.
See how sweet he is? I mean, he was always touchy-lovey. Look how white he is next to me.
June and Elvis, seen here rolling around on the stern of the boat, grooming one another under the burning summer sun. Later, posing half naked with June and her friend.
He has his shirt off in the video a lot.
He had his shirt off all the time. He was always, he liked his hair dark. And in order to get his hair dark, he would wet his hair. So to wet his hair, he removed his shirt and he would put a towel around his neck, wet his hair, and it looked darker that way.
So now you know one of Elvis's secrets. Now tomorrow, June reveals some more of those secrets, including intimate details about her love life with the king. Was Elvis a good kisser at that age?
He was a marvelous kisser. I mean, he didn't have much work to do. He had these luscious, full lips. You know, I mean, what else? I mean, he was Yes, he was a good kisser.
A good kisser and a hopeless romantic. Tomorrow, the girl who owned Elvis's heart before he ever thought of Priscilla. June Juanico reveals the details of her all-nighter with the king and the day he proposed.
But he asked you to marry him.
And I said yes.
But someone else said no. Tomorrow, the man who destroyed this love affair.
Oh, he was dead set against me.
Why?
I was a threat to Elvis's career, his future. I was the envy of every girl in the United States.
You know I can be
The king and the woman who wanted to be his queen.
He asked you to marry him.
And I said yes.
Elvis Presley proposed to this woman. Now, for the first time, their love, their passion, their romance, unleashed in a priceless home movie found in an attic after 40 years.
He was a marvelous kisser.
A Southern belle kisses and tells about her all-nighter with Elvis and the man who came between them. It's Elvis's Summer of Innocence.
Before Priscilla, Elvis had another true love.
And Extra has an exclusive look at the forgotten home movies of the king and the woman who could have been his queen. She tells our David Rose why their passionate nights had to end after Elvis's Summer of Innocence.
That's Elvis, driving from Memphis to Biloxi, Mississippi in his mom's pink Cadillac. Destination, 20 miles out to sea, a fishing adventure. Invited guest Eddie Bellman took these home movies of Elvis on vacation, but here he's on stage, giving his friends a mock performance, using a pole aboard ship as a microphone. He was singing to his sweetheart then, June Juanico.
I think my love for Elvis will be eternal.
June sounds like an Elvis fan. She does love his music, but she also loves the man. 40 years ago, she was Elvis's girlfriend. They dated for a year. Photographed here with the king, who wanted her to be his queen.
He asked you to marry him.
And I said yes.
How did he ask you to marry him? How did he do it?
It was under the stars. At Gulf Hills. Let's see, the month of July, hot, sticky night, mosquitoes.
But he said, can you wait for me?
Yeah, will you wait for me? I can't get married for at least 3 years. Will you wait for me? I want you to be my wife. I was the envy of every girl in the United States.
It was 1956, right here in Biloxi, Mississippi, where Elvis met his teenage sweetheart, June. Later that same year, Elvis, his girlfriend, Elvis's parents, and a couple of friends boarded a boat docked just down the beach from here and went on Elvis's very first deep-sea fishing trip.
June's friend, Eddie Bellman, brought along his 8mm movie camera and caught more than sharks and silvery bonitas. He captured a side of Elvis rarely seen before. The image of the boy with his trademark hair silhouetted against the harsh midday sun was becoming a man.
He is cool. He was cool. He was having a good time.
I watched the film with June, which brought back fond memories of her teenage loves.
A lot of hugging. He was very affectionate.
Very.
The film shows the couple playfully messing around on the boat. Elvis seen here kissing the girl he so affectionately wanted to be his wife.
Why do you think Elvis picked this area to come fishing on his vacation?
To see me. Why else? Who would come to Biloxi, Mississippi?
Elvis first came to this southern Gulf Bay to perform at a local nightclub.
You know I can be found.
June and her girlfriend went to see the Biloxi show. During a break, June got close enough to the stage and caught Elvis's eye.
This arm just reached out from this crowd and grabbed me, you know, like this, and said, where are you going? I'm going back to my table. He said, you're not leaving, are you? And I said, no, I'm not leaving.
They left together and stayed out till the wee hours.
We sat out in the car until 6 o'clock in the morning, just sitting there, and we just sat there and talked and talked and talked.
Was Elvis a good kisser?
He was a marvelous kisser. I mean, he didn't have much work to do. He had these luscious, full lips. You know, I mean, what else? I mean, he was, yes, he was a good kisser. He was gorgeous.
Sexy.
Absolutely, positively. The most beautiful man I've ever seen in my entire life.
Was it love at first sight?
If it wasn't love at first sight, it was a lot alike. A whole lot alike.
With his summer vacation coming to an end, it was time for Elvis to get back to business. Hound Dog was shaking up the nation, and Elvis's career was moving at Mach speed. But his relationship with June was coming to a screeching halt.
I went steady with Elvis, but Elvis didn't go steady with me. So that's why we split. You know, if I couldn't be number one, I wasn't going to be anything.
But number one on the mind of Elvis's manager, Colonel Tom Parker, was Elvis's image. June says Parker thought of her as a worthless distraction.
He was dead set against me. Colonel Parker just wanted me out of the picture completely.
Why?
I was a threat to Elvis's career, his future.
A future that would eventually crown Elvis as the king of rock and roll.
Do you ever wonder, though, what it would have been like to have been June Presley?
Some guy said, do you realize you were only maybe one number away from hitting the lotto?
All part of Elvis's Summer of Innocence.
Kind of makes you wonder what would have happened if they did marry. Now, Elvis and June saw each other for the last time in March of 1957. And of course, 10 years later, he married Priscilla. Now, tomorrow, you'll see Elvis, the great outdoorsman.
Was he competitive? I would say so, sure.
And Eddie Bellman has the proof. Tomorrow on Extra, Elvis the Daredevil. See him try water skiing, shark fishing, and skeet shooting for the first time. It's the wild side of Elvis Presley. That's tomorrow, only on Extra.
Wednesday marks the 29th anniversary of Elvis and Priscilla Presley's wedding, but she wasn't the first love of the King's life. An unknown romance is captured in a lost home movie discovered exclusively by Extra. It is filled with remarkable images of a carefree vacation in Elvis's Summer of Innocence.
It was 1956. A brand new Chevy cost $1,500. Car hops and drive-ins were all the rage. A hamburger was delivered for only 15 cents. Dwight D. Eisenhower was president, and a guy from Memphis was becoming king.
Don't be cruel, true heart is true.
But while Elvis's records were climbing the charts, he was in Biloxi, Mississippi, climbing aboard the Aunt Jenny, a deep-sea fishing vessel. Eddie Bellman, a Biloxi native, invited Elvis to go fishing. Bellman shot this 8mm movie 40 years ago. So why was it locked away for 4 decades?
I had no idea it would be as valuable as it turned out to be, you see, and I just stored it away.
The film documents a bare-chested Elvis fishing for shark 20 miles out to sea, posing with his girlfriend, then 17-year-old June Juanico, and performing for his boatmates with a mock microphone.
Elvis was high energy. Yeah, he liked to play. It was hard to keep up with Elvis, it really was.
Caught here telling his sweetheart June how much he loved her as they rock and roll around the deck of the boat. Elvis had proposed to marry June in 1956. By early 57, their love affair was over.
It was another life. It was a different life. It was so long ago. Part of history.
Love me tender, love me true.
I watched the film with June and asked why this movie is so meaningful.
This is the only time you'll ever see anything that Elvis does look relaxed. Well, what's to be stressed out about when you're in Biloxi deep sea fishing?
We see Elvis and his pals singing along with the radio.
My heart beats so it scares me.
Notice the German army caps Elvis and his friends are wearing. Bellman brought them back from World War II. In this scene, they're singing and mocking Adolf Hitler.
Speaking as much German as a southern boy from Memphis, Tennessee could speak.
Back on land, a courageous Elvis holds a tiny cigarette paper arm's length as his buddy Red fires a BB gun. It's a direct hit. Then, fully clothed because he's sunburned from fishing all day, Elvis skis the Biloxi Bay. Elvis's Summer of '56 vacation was coming to an end, and so was a certain innocence. But his career in show business was ready to explode.
Although it's always crowded, you still can find some room.
Elvis left Biloxi, Mississippi to come here, 20th Century Fox in Los Angeles. Filming was just getting underway on his very first film, Love Me Tender. His teenage sweetheart, June Juanico, was 1,000 miles away, staying in touch with her lover, Elvis, by telephone. And she remembers one very special phone call.
He sang Love Me Tender on the phone, wanted to know how I liked it, you know, and I thought it was real pretty. Would I love to have had a recorder on my phone back then and saved that?
In fact, June regrets not saving much of anything from her courtship days with Elvis.
The only thing that got saved. And it was in with my some of my photographs. It was tucked away in a scrapbook. Wonderful memories. But my memories don't get tucked away. They kind of stay with me.
And how does June feel now when she hears an Elvis song on the radio?
Sometimes I have to actually turn it off. Isn't that strange? It just makes my heart sink. I'm sorry, Elvis, but you know, it makes me sad.
Too personal for you.
Mm-hmm.
And June says she misses her Elvis even after 40 years.
Oh, desperately. Desperately.
All part of Elvis's Summer of Innocence.
That would be Elvis's last carefree summer, because after he stepped off that boat, his career skyrocketed. Joining me now is Michael Ochs, musicologist and author of this upcoming new book, Shock, Rattle, and Roll. Michael, take a look at Elvis here. This is what the American public next saw Elvis doing on the Steve Allen Show. How is this appearance different than everything else that had been seen up to that point?
Well, the TV show he did right before this was the Milton Berle TV show, where he did a complete bump and grind as he sang Hound Dog. So when Steve Allen booked him for his show, he insisted Elvis wear a tuxedo. In addition to that, he actually had to sing Hound Dog to a basset hound.
What did Elvis think about that?
Elvis was actually embarrassed.
I can imagine. Elvis's songs, maybe with the help of that show, Hound Dog went to the top of the charts, so did Don't Be Cruel, and then he made his very first film, Love Me Tender. Now take a look at this film and tell us what's so important about this film at that time.
Well, this was the first feature film that starred a rock and roll star, and not only a rock and roll star, the rock and roll star. It was originally called the Reno Brothers when they had it scripted, and they decided at the last minute to work in this major national phenomenon, Elvis Presley, into it to increase sales.
How was the movie? How well did it do?
It did very well. It would have been a bomb. Elvis Presley made it a hit movie.
It was the first of 33 movies that he made.
Yes, and one of the better ones too, surprisingly.
He went on to perform on the Ed Sullivan Show. He'd been on a lot of shows up to that point. Now, what was different about the Ed Sullivan Show as compared to Steve Allen, and why was that show so important?
Well, every Elvis TV appearance was great, but Ed Sullivan was the highest-rated entertainment variety show of its time. So this was the appearance that really brought Elvis into everybody's living room.
There was a little controversy about that appearance as well, though, wasn't there?
Well, at one point, Sullivan decided to shoot Elvis only from the waist up because he was terrified that he would gyrate too much and insult middle America.
Tell you what, the gyrating, though, is what made Elvis the king at later times, that and the voice.
That's for sure.
1956 was a big year for him.
I think it was one of Elvis's best years, if not his best.
Michael Ochs, author of Shock, Rattle, and Roll, thanks for being here with us today.
Thanks, David.
Interesting stuff, Libby.